Good day, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to Virtue and Vice. What I'd like to do this episode and also the next one is talk about the virtues and vices of both capitalism, as we know it now, and socialism. When we think of capitalism, uh, many of us have different concepts depending on when you were born of what it is. Uh, If you were a baby boomer like me, capitalism may mean one thing. Or if you're of a later generation, what we have Generation X and Y and Z. And now I think there's a generation that's called Alpha. We had to start over again in the alphabet. But depending where you fall there, the whole concept of capitalism may mean something entirely different for you. Now, let me tell you why. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1956. So in 1956, I graduated, of course, in 1974. But when I graduated in 1974, the and this is in the industrial Midwest, just to give you some bearing here. Wages were generally between $3 and $5 an hour. You think, what? How could you live on that? But the thing was, in 1974, if you made between $3 and $5 an hour, you could do something with that money because money was worth something. You could actually graduate from high school and get an entry level job in a factory somewhere, making somewhere between $3 and $5 an hour. Now, with that money, you could buy a decent used car. You could also buy a cheaper home or rent somewhere, and you could put food on the table and maybe even have a little bit of money in your pocket saved up to take a vacation, making $3 to $5 an hour. Um, Try that today. Think of a young person that graduates today. Around here where we live, if it's a factory job, it's the entry level somewhere between $15 and $20 an hour. If it's a halfway decent job, you might make less than that. We live in South Carolina in an area where there's quite a few jobs. But think about it. What can you do? Can you buy a used car and also buy a house and also put food on the table on one of those incomes? No, probably what's going to happen is you're going to have two incomes if you get married, and you're going to have maybe more than two jobs to try to make ends meet, and you still can't buy a house. You may be stuck in a rent somewhere, and it's expensive, and it's hard to make ends meet. Now, a whole lot changed between 1974 and now, between a baby boomer generation and an X, Y, and Z generation that we deal with now. A lot has changed, and you know it, you feel it. And it's no wonder that socialism sounds pretty good to many of those later generations, X, Y, and Z, because you feel like you've been cheated in many ways. Unless you've gone to a university and maybe got a degree in something that makes you a halfway decent money, you're struggling and you're wondering if there's a better system here. Well, I'd like to suggest that something happened with capitalism. Something happened with capitalism that made it a whole lot different now than it was in 1974 for baby boomers. You see, at that time, we could graduate from high school or college, and we thought in terms of an American dream, that there was something that we could look forward to, because if we worked hard, if we tried to graduate, or if we worked hard, we could make our lives better. And our parents' generation, they wanted life to be better for us. They made sacrifices to do that. But today, that's changed. The American dream is an elusive nightmare to many people. And what is the reason for it? What's the reason for the loss of the American dream that came out of capitalism? Of course, America always held out that dream. And that's the reason many immigrants come into this country today, whether legally or illegally. They believe that there's something better here. And there probably is here than where they came from. But our dream is slipping away. And many in our culture realize that something is happening. I'd like to suggest that capitalism has become corrupted. And whether or not it can be fixed is yet to be seen, because it's been corrupted to such an extent, it's hard to say whether or not it can be turned around. There are three different factors, I believe, that have corrupted capitalism to this degree. And I'd like to just briefly look at them with you. One is called plutocracy. Now, plutocracy, what it is a society that's ruled or controlled by people of great wealth or influence. And our plutocracy is combined with government. You have industry and government, and there are many policies, there are many politicians that profit from this arrangement, from those people at the top giving things to those who are politicians, and patting their back pockets because they're all wealthier because of it. And it's rotten. It's rotten to the core. You can think back just a few years ago to the pandemic that we were in, COVID-19. Remember that? Wasn't that long ago? It was during this time that many people suffered for one reason or another, but the government came to the rescue too for many people. We spent trillions of dollars to try to help at this time through government loans and government assistance, and government helping with unemployment benefits. But the rich during this time got much richer. You take people like Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos during this time, increased their wealth by billions of dollars. Or the Waltons increased their wealth by billions of dollars during the pandemic. How is that? And then you had at the same time many politicians who became much wealthier during this period of time. Plutocracy, this ruling class working together in concert with the politicians. And we've set it up that way. We've allowed all of this to happen at the swamp that's gotten smellier over the years, where there's been this plutocracy. And politicians grow richer. Those who are related to politicians grow richer. And what's happened? during this period of time. And we're beginning to experience this more now, is that the wealth, which used to be the wealth, if you take all the national wealth, we call it the gross national product, the wealth, what we're able to make, used to be with back in 1971, 60% of the wealth in America was in the middle class. When we come to 2021, it's 50%. So the middle class lost 11% of their wealth. Well, the rich got more of it. The middle class gets less of it. And then we have the dependent class. More resources went to the dependent class. But those of us in the middle, we got squeezed big time. And most of this is because of plutocracy, because there's favors given to the rich, to the ruling class. Now, in some ways, that's nothing new. That's been going on for, millennia. But what's happened here is in a land where there's supposedly equal opportunity for all, many in that lower middle class feel like they're just going to be absorbed into the lower class. And many of those who are making more, they're pretty happy about it because they're solidly in that class now. More wealth is being given to that class. Is it any wonder why socialism, the promise of socialism, is appealing to many people? Because many people feel like the pieces of the pie, all I'm getting is the crumbs. And there's a bigger piece of the pie that's going to these other people, and I'm left with nothing, just some crumbs that fall from the master's table. Oh, but that's one thing that we deal with. But there's another factor of this that we have to come to grips with, and that is for politicians, how they obtain power, how they have their clout, is by spending money. And most of that spending is money that they don't have. So, what happens in order to maintain power, to keep things going, and to be benevolent to everyone, except for those maybe who need it the most? Um, we go into additional debt. So during the pandemic, we went into an additional $3 trillion of debt because the government wanted to make it right for everyone. So we added that to our national debt. And now, since that time, we've added more to the national debt. And we are at the tune of what, 35 trillion, almost 35 trillion now in debt. And a larger portion of our expenditure is going toward this debt obligation from the US government. And not only that, we come to everyone's rescue. And because of that, there's less of the piece of pie for everyone else. But think about $35 trillion. The government, I don't think, has any intention of even trying to address that issue. Now we are having just a series of continuing resolutions, stop gap measures to be able to spend more money because they don't want to relinquish that power. They don't want to relinquish that power they have in this plutocracy with the upper class because they're getting richer. But at what expense? The biggest expense now, of course, is inflation. Inflation. And it's something that we're just beginning to feel the impact of to a great degree. For those of you who are trying to buy a house, or maybe you're like us in many ways, we're baby boomers, but we're also on a fixed income, and we tend to be at the lower part of that. And you think, okay, the more that inflation goes up, at what point are we going to be sucked into total dependency? And it could happen. It's happened to many seniors. So many of you young people, you're not alone. The problem is not just baby boomers. The problem is our government and government spending and the great need for some reform with capitalism. It's become corrupt. And the question is, can it be cleaned up? Is there any kind of incentive in Washington to clean it up? There will not be any kind of incentive as long as we maintain the status quo. As long as greed and corruption is the standard fare in Washington, as long as they can continue to pad their pockets with money that's given to them or promised to them, it's not going to change because it's comfortable. And it makes them feel good because without term limits, they also think, well, I can continue to build my own kingdom. I represent my state, but most of all, they represent themselves because they and their families are very well off, while many in their own from their own constituency are suffering big time. For those of you who are baby boomers, you remember what cities used to be like in America. You used to be able to go to any city in America, like New York City or Chicago or maybe Seattle or San Diego or LA, and you could go to that city and have a wonderful time. We can't do it anymore. What is going on? Where is our incentive to clean things up? Where is our incentive from Washington to deal with some of the issues that are cancer in our culture? You can't go to many cities and feel like you can even enjoy a baseball game there anymore, or many other things that our wonderful cities used to provide. You see, our city set on the hill has become tarnished. And where is the incentive going to come from to clean it up? I believe in capitalism, but I believe also that capitalism, if it has unchecked greed, will destroy itself. That our politicians, unless there's some term limits and some tougher laws concerning nepotism and other things that are rampant in our nation, it doesn't look good. Right now, I think we're at the point where many politicians are very desperate because some of this is hitting the fan. We're in an election, so you're going to hear a lot of promises again about the appeal of both socialism and capitalism. And we're going to get messages about making America great again. You see, the problem is many people have never experienced any greatness from America. That's the thing that many of us baby boomers don't realize. Many young people don't ever remember a time that America was great again. So they're not going to be drawn to that. But there are many other politicians that would like to draw them into something else. And many times it's the ruling party that profits from whoever will follow them. I think we need to get back to some basic things in America. There used to be a concept called the common good, and it was why many ideal politicians went to Washington because they believed that they were called to do the common good, to help everyone. It's not that way anymore. They want to please their special interest, not the common good. But we the people have the power. One thing that politicians fear more than anything else, that is the people. When the people begin to realize that the power actually resides in the people, and when we unite together for the benefit of us all, that's a scary thing to a lot of politicians because they have to relinquish some power and give it to others. But there's hope. There's great hope for America. But we got to clean it up. And I think a lot of that gets back to just the common decency of the middle class. The middle class made America great. The middle class can make America great again. But don't be duped into something that where there's a lot of promises, but there's only a few people benefiting from the promises. Thank you very much.